first, I just want to say, for those of you who don't know me, this presentation is about a book that I wrote called Pipe Dreams. It's available. The rights it's published in the US and Canada. So if you have a US Amazon account, you can get the ebook or the audiobook, but you can still get it in the in Switzerland at some bookstores in the print copy. And I'd be curious if any of you guys have gotten it and could share with the others where you can get it, in case anyone's interested in getting it at the end. I don't know if you have a chat box or you could enter that, or we can just discuss it at the end. But yeah, so there's that. And okay, so here we go. So as a challenge to myself, I decided to try to organize this as a scientific presentation, which is a little bit of a stretch because it's, not a scientific study, but I hope that will be easy to follow, and it made it kind of fun for me. And since you all know about the science of sanitation, I'm not going to talk about that much. I'm going to talk about how I went about my work as a journalist, my process, and how I discovered this world, your world. My background is I'm a science journalist from the US, and I live in The Hague. As was said, I have a bachelor's in astronomy, so very far from sanitation. And I have a master's in journalism, after which I became kind of a generalist science writer. Then I was working in radio, and I was freelancing for magazines. When in 2013, something happened to me. So I got assigned two stories. So in my work, the way it works, the way the business works, is either as a freelancer, I pitch editors, or they come to me with their ideas. And these two stories came to me. These aren't stories I pitched. I didn't know anything about them. Editors came to me and said, "Hey, would you like to write these stories?" The first story was a story about technology solutions for low resource contexts. And this story ended up focusing largely on the Gates Foundation's Reinvent the Toilet Challenge. And then the second one in the same year was a completely different story. It was about cities in high resource settings where there's a lot of waste heat, and initiatives for collecting that waste heat and putting it to use. And one of the places that I learned that there was a lot of waste heat was in sewers. And so when I wrote both of these in the same year, I noticed that they were both really about sanitation in a sort of larger way, two sides of the same coin, and sort of the latent potential, the untapped potential in sanitation systems. And I wondered, what's going on here? This, as I write my book, this kind of opened the lid on my mind. And so I decided to look deeper to see if there was something more happening, if this was sort of just two small pieces of a larger picture of innovation in sanitation. So I undertook, a process of learning and writing more stories. And eventually I pitched a book, which was picked up by Simon & Schuster in 2018. And I've been working on that since. And what I'm gonna argue today, get back to at the end, is that what I found was not just a lot of new technologies for a lot of different contexts, but some evidence that the meaning of the toilet is changing. And I'd also like to think, I'm kind of coming to terms with the fact that I've myself have gotten caught up in that shift in meaning, and I'm participating in making a new meaning for what the toilet is for the future. And I would propose that perhaps all of you have become part of that as well. So this is what I had absorbed about the toilet prior to this point. It's a miraculous technology. Sir John Harington had ushered in the modern era of the flush toilet in the late 16th century when he invented an early version, but it didn't quite catch on until the 19th century when inventors made them easier to use, and marketers put them in people's homes, and then they got connected to sewers, and then eventually in the early 20th century, inventors developed wastewater treatment that cleans sewage with microbes. And if you look at this image from the early 1900s of a miniature salesman sample of a toilet, it's really very recognizable in both the appearance and also in the way that it functions. And this development, the toilet and the system that it connects to, which I call in my book toilet systems, I think in a way that was sort of a coinage as well, but it made it easier to talk about it, led to huge benefits for public health, as you know, including increases in the human lifespan. So that's great. But what I realized is that picture really wasn't complete, because when I looked more deeply into it, I just felt that something about that story was off. So this is me in Cap Haitian in Haiti. You guys know that this is a kind of toilet that people around the world use. Billions of people have inadequate sanitation. And so that miraculous toilet hasn't come here. And then on the other side of things, even that when places considered to have advanced infrastructure are having sewage problems. So these are a few headlines from the past few years. Hurricanes, which are increasing in frequency or intensity because of climate change, are causing sewage disasters, overflows, and they're taking out wastewater treatment plants. Public restrooms are lacking, not just during the pandemic, but most cities have a terrible lack of public restrooms. So there's a problem on sort of that end of the infrastructure. It's not serving people's needs. And there's a growing awareness that many places, like even in the US, lack sanitation infrastructure. So most recently and most well known is the case of Alabama, where people just straight pipe their toilets to their backyards. And really, if you have a toilet, but you're just flushing the waste out into your garden, I mean, really, what's the point? I mean, it's a terrible indictment of this technology. And then there were other issues that just kept coming up that I saw. And I came to see that toilets, as we know them, and the systems that they're attached to aren't really a good fit for a lot of contexts, and they're failing a lot of people. And they aren't optimized to address the many challenges that face us in the future. So maybe the number of people who won't be served by conventional infrastructure, I mean, for whom that will fail, might increase in the future if we take all of these factors into account. And these are issues that the Victorians didn't dream of. So I wondered, are these innovators onto something? Is there a better way? So, method slide. I am a journalist, so I work by doing interviews, reading texts. I go on for on-site visits, places, and check things out for myself. But I also relied on a kind of a growing discipline, you could call it, in journalism, known as solutions journalism. It's pretty new, and most journalism tends to investigate what's going wrong. Solutions journalism also investigates what's going wrong, but through the lens of how people are responding. So you will go look at a solution somewhere and investigate whether how that solution is doing and how applicable it might be. So it's defined by some as deep insight. Well, I say insightful, deep and insightful, but investigations into how people are responding to widely shared problems. And I mean, what's a more widely shared problem than what to do with our pee and our poo? So my questions when I talk to people go something like, well, what's the problem that you're trying to address? What's your response? Why that response? What's working? What's not working? Where else could it fit? Where is it inappropriate? Questions like that. So results. Oh, one thing I wanted to say was that the approach of solutions journalism, because I was I was taking the perspective that it's a widely held, like a universal problem, allowed me to do things a little bit differently than is traditionally done. So I would say that very often people, journalism and even in academia, when writing about sanitation, it gets divided up into contexts. So traditionally there'd be like, maybe I would do a chapter on slums and I would do a chapter on sewers, something like that. A chapter on, poor rural areas, things like that. But I was able, using this approach, to kind of mash it all up together and give a kind of universal look at toilets by looking at the themes of sort of the challenges and then the various solutions to those challenges. So the first chapter, I dethrone the toilet. This is conventional infrastructure. Actually, this is a miniaturized conventional infrastructure at Madurodam in The Hague. If you know what that is, it's a place that has all these miniature sites from all over Holland, and they've bothered to put a wastewater treatment plant in there that I really appreciate. And then I sort of show readers how it could be done differently by comparing it with this project in Snake, which you guys may have heard of. It uses vacuum toilets and an anaerobic digester to recover. It's a decentralized system to recover biogas, and they get struvite and they could get water out of it as a sort of showcase for that kind of technology. The second chapter, I look at the challenges of health, but I say, look at how toilets could help us not only take these, bugs far away from us, which is what toilets have done in the past, but how we could use toilets as a way to analyze our pee and our poo in sewers, which is being done more and more in the pandemic, which is interesting because I finished writing the book at the beginning of the pandemic, and I thought immediately, like, oh, we got to do, epidemiology with, sewage surveillance, and then it became a huge thing. So that was really interesting to see, and then the next chapter looks at the infrastructure itself, especially infrastructure for transportation. I went to Haiti to look at the soil program, which is a container-based program. And I also talk about smart sewers in South Bend, Indiana, and I talk about, different ways of dealing with excreta on site or in a centralized way. Then there's a chapter on what I call the liquids, which is a bit of a stretch, but water and urine. And in this is a picture of the pitcher that I used to collect my own urine. I was able, by chance, because I had a baby a few years ago, to become a donor for the Mothers for Mothers program here in the Netherlands, which collects urine and gives it to a pharmaceutical company to take HCG, which is a pregnancy hormone, out of the urine and turn it into fertility medicine. So that's kind of how I came to value my own urine. And I talk about, the other ways that urine can be used, and also how we can use less water, but also reclaim water also from our sanitation systems. Then the solids, so you'll know this is the black soldier fly. I talk about that, but I also talk about biosolids and what you can do with biosolids from centralized treatment systems. And I try to give a good overview of that. Then I talk about trash, because I came to realize that the garbage in our sanitation systems presents a huge problem. It also presents a bit of a opportunity. Fatbergs are terrible, but they, you can sort of recover some energy from them. I also talk about the problem of trash for emptying pit latrines. And in this case, this is a project also from the Netherlands. I think that's where all my photos are from, where they are pulling used dissolved toilet paper out of the sewage stream before it goes through treatment and cleaning it up, and it becomes cellulose, which is an industrial product. So that's an interesting project, and I've recently heard that they are expanding. So they hope to have some success with this. I have a chapter on equity, menstrual equity. I think, well, I'll talk about that later, but that was sort of a last minute thing put in, but I decided I couldn't talk about toilets without talking about menstruation. There's so much interesting stuff happening. The public toilets I talk about, and I also talk about a project from the US that is designing, architects who are designing universal toilets that don't segregate by gender, but make space for every kind of person who needs to use a toilet and all of the things that they might reasonably want to do in there. And this is just one view of their of a design for one of their toilets. It's called the Stalled Project. And then the last chapter is on psychology and behavior. And I was in Indonesia, and this is Pak Kun. He's a sanitation entrepreneur. He's got his paper mache poop and his box of food, and the health workers behind him. And he's gone to a community and is trying to sell them septic tanks. And the day I was there, he managed to, after a few years, sell the last 2 septic tanks that he needed to sell for this neighborhood to be considered open defecation free. Prior to that, they were piping their toilets straight into the river. They were using helicopter toilets. But I also saw him have some failures as well. And I also talked just, about Freud, and I also give some guidance about how readers can make a difference themselves in terms of contributing to a better situation in toilets in the world. So one reader has said, so the result is this: one reader has said that reading the book was like being at a big toilet party with a friend introducing each person doing neat stuff with sanitation. I love that description because that was really what I was trying to do. He said, there's never a dull moment. And that was what I was really going for. But aside from that, the fact that toilets are fun and that there's so much going on, what I hope readers will take away from the book is that when I looked for the future of the toilet, I didn't find a better concept to replace the kind of gold standard of the flush toilet attached to the sewer, attached to the treatment plant, but I found a wide variety of concepts, each appropriate for different contexts. And the book really encourages people to let go of the idea of one size fits all and embrace instead a range of options that will be coming in the future, all of which could be considered, I hope, gold standard. And then I think, since I have some time, I hope that whets your appetite to get the book and see all the projects featured in it, and how my weird mind has organized and synthesized it all. But I want to take a moment to step back and talk about a larger cultural shift that I hinted at, that I think this book is a part of. So what emerged when I looked at all of these innovations, it's that the meaning of the toilet is changing alongside the technology itself. And I might argue that the technology and the meaning have to change together. One can't change without the other. So let me try to explain what I mean, which is that in the wash world, I've noticed that sanitation seems to have a smaller piece of the pie. It often comes second to water, and its meaning is largely about health. The toilet's meaning. And in higher income places, it's wastewater is part of water, which is kind of too bad because toilets don't have to use water or wastewater. But if you center the toilet, as I did with this book, and looked at its and tell stories about toilet systems in the center, you can see that the toilet touches so much more than those few things, so much more than health. Health is important, but there's many other things other than health that people care about. Not everyone cares about all of these things, but pretty much anything that someone cares about, you can draw a connection to the toilet. And we can see the toilet and toilet systems as a tool for addressing all of these issues, for helping to solve a wide range of problems, and as a tool for justice and as a tool for planetary health, not just individual human health or public health. Another way to put this might be that the toilet is an interface that connects us to the planet and to each other. And of course, everyone knows the phrase, everybody poops. What that means is that, so if we can improve the toilet, we can improve everybody's lives. And that's why I came up with a new word to use in the book, which some people have seemed to have taken to. Lutopia describes a world in which everyone has access to healthy and sustainable toilets. And the important thing is that Lutopia is not just a world with better toilets, but it's a better world altogether. So this book, rather than serving up a lot of distressing facts, tries to kind of motivate people with this vision of Lutopia. And I've noticed that, young people are throwing off old conventions and power structures and questioning status quos. And we can make the toilet a part of that too. As I say in the book, the home we have built for ourselves on this planet is falling apart in so many ways. Why not start the renovation with the toilet? Okay, and that's the end. I want to just, as in the format of a scientific conference, I want to say thank you. And I want to say thank you to you guys, because you do the work and have spent time with me, giving me interviews, showing me what you know. I've taken online courses from you and read your papers and drawn from those papers in this book. And I really appreciate all of that a lot. And yeah, I'm interested in your questions. And this is how you can contact me if you want. And if you want to help, you can buy, recommend, and review the book